A 10-year-old boy collapsed without warning at an airport security checkpoint, just as scanners lit up with something no one expected, 12 mysterious metal objects inside his body. It was a routine morning at Denver International Airport, the line slow, the air calm, and no sign that anything unusual was about to shatter the quiet rhythm of Terminal C. It was supposed to be a routine morning. The sun peeked through the high windows of Denver International Airport, casting honey-colored light across the white tile floors and endless lines of passengers. Among them was a small family, just a boy, his mother and father, standing at Terminal C's security checkpoint. Eli Simmons, age 10, held a stuffed polar bear close to his chest with one hand, while the other clutched his father's jacket. His wide blue eyes wandered, absorbing the noise and the motion with quiet intensity. His mother, Miranda, crouched down to straighten his hoodie. "We'll be in Orlando before dinner, kiddo," she smiled. "You'll finally see that NASA Center you keep talking about." Eli nodded but said nothing. He rarely did. That morning he had woken unusually quiet, even for him. There had been no complaints, no usual grumbling about wearing shoes, and no questions about whether he could bring more than 3 books in his backpack. Just silence. His parents chalked it up to excitement. "Step through, please," said the TSA officer, motioning Eli forward. His little shoes tapped softly against the floor as he approached the full-body scanner. Miranda smiled, trying to reassure him. "Just like we practiced at home, remember? In and out." Eli nodded again and stepped into the machine. The scanner lit up, swept over his small frame in a slow vertical movement. Then it beeped. But it wasn't the usual. It was loud, urgent. Red lights flared around the booth. The TSA officer's smile faltered. "Just a second, ma'am," he said. Before anyone could react, Eli's knees buckled. His small body crumpled to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. For a second, everyone froze. Then panic spread. "Sir, I need assistance," the officer yelled. Miranda dropped her bag and rushed toward her son. "Eli, baby!" she screamed. A paramedic team stationed nearby raced over, clearing the area. "He just fainted?" one of them asked while checking Eli's pulse and pupils. "Yes, he was just standing there." "I don't know what's happening," Miranda sobbed. The airport shut down the checkpoint. Officers escorted the family to a side area while Eli was stabilized and placed on a stretcher. He was breathing, but barely. The TSA security lead, a woman named Harper Reeves, looked down at the results from the scanner. Her face went pale. She tapped her radio. "Get DHS on the line. We've got a miner flagged with 12 unknown metal signatures inside his body." "What the hell?" muttered her colleague. "Kid's got metal in him? Like what, implants?" "No," Harper said, shaking her head. "There's no surgical scars. I looked. That kid doesn't have a single mark on him." An agent from Homeland Security arrived within 20 minutes, followed by a full medical team dispatched from a nearby federal hospital. Eli remained unconscious, his pulse erratic but stable. His parents were whisked into separate rooms for questioning. Miranda kept asking if her son was going to be okay. Her husband, Nathan, remained quiet, arms folded, eyes lowered. Something about his silence made the investigators uneasy. Meanwhile, in the hospital's sterile imaging room, a radiologist stared at the scan of Eli's body in disbelief. Nestled along his spine, under his ribcage, embedded near his kidneys and wrists, were 12 tiny objects, no larger than tic-tacs, each one made of a strange alloy with magnetic signatures that pulsed faintly. "They're symmetrical," the radiologist muttered. "Evenly distributed, but they're not medical. I've never seen anything like this." The lead investigator, Agent Kerr from DHS, paced the hallway. "No incisions, no scars, no history of surgery. This kid's file is basically empty before age 4. He glanced at the printout. And get this, he's never been vaccinated, never enrolled in a public school, no official pediatrician on record. The only doctor they ever saw was a private clinic that doesn't exist anymore." "What are you saying?" asked the radiologist. "I'm saying this boy might not be who or what we think he is." Hours passed. Eli's body remained unconscious but stable. As the sun dipped behind the Rocky Mountains, casting orange light flickered for a moment. Then Eli's eyes snapped open. His irises, once blue, glowed faintly with a silvery hue before returning to normal. No one saw it. No one but the nurse, who immediately dropped her clipboard and backed out of the room in stunned silence. Back in the airport, the TSA checkpoint was still blocked off. Harper Reeves looked at the handheld printout again, the machine scan of Eli. She circled the 12 metallic dots with a red pen. "What the hell were you doing in there, kid?" she whispered to herself. The silence in the hospital corridor was pierced only by the rhythmic beep of machines and the distant hum of fluorescent lights. Agent Kerr paced outside Eli's room, hands in his pockets, thoughts racing. Behind the glass, Eli lay motionless, his small frame dwarfed by the massive diagnostic equipment surrounding him. Doctors came and went, murmuring theories that sounded more like science fiction than medicine. 12 metal objects, no surgery scars, no infections, no trauma. Nothing. It made no sense, but what struck Kerr more than the scans was the behavior of Eli's parents. They hadn't reacted like people who had just watched their child collapse without warning. There were no screams, no frantic bargaining with doctors. Miranda had cried, yes, but not with the desperation of a mother experiencing something unimaginable. It was a restrained grief, like mourning something you'd spent years dreading. Nathan was even more unsettling, stoic, measured, almost rehearsed. Kerr watched as Nathan sat across from him in the debrief room. He had declined water, declined a lawyer, and answered every question without resistance, but also without offering much at all. "Tell me again," Kerr said, leaning forward. "Has Eli ever had surgery?" Nathan shook his head. "No, never. He's been healthy." Kerr raised an eyebrow. "Not even broken bones? X-ray? Flu shots?" Nathan hesitated for just a second. "He doesn't get sick much." Kerr pressed a button under the table, signaling the analyst team in the next room. "What about pediatric checkups?" Nathan looked him in the eye. "We homeschool. We handle things on our own." In the other room, analysts scrolled through databases, digging for anything that could contradict that claim. They searched hospital registries, insurance records, vaccination logs. Nothing. No digital footprint. It was as if Eli had existed in the shadows of the system for most of his life. Kerr stepped out to check the search results. "What do we have?" he asked. "Nothing since he was 4, said the lead analyst. "There's a birth certificate filed in Oregon, but after that, no trace of formal schooling, no doctor visits, no prescriptions, not even a dental checkup. It's like the family vanished from the grid." Kerr stared at the screen, unsettled. "You're saying this kid has lived off the radar for 6 years?" "Completely," the analyst confirmed. Miranda's interview was playing on a loop in another monitor. She sat differently than Nathan, nervous fingers, quick glances to the door. She spoke more than her husband, but offered even fewer answers. "He was born small," she had said. "We kept him close. We didn't trust the system. Not with his sensitivities." "What kind of sensitivities?" the agent had asked. "Lights, noises, crowds," Miranda murmured. "He'd panic in public. That's why we traveled at night, kept him homeschooled. We didn't want to stress him, but when pressed for any diagnosis, any therapist's name, she had deflected. We knew what was best for him. Doctors don't always help." It was evasive, carefully worded, almost too careful. Back in the hospital, the pediatric specialist reviewed the new round of scans. "These metal objects," she said to Kerr, "they're not inert. They emit faint EM pulses. We picked it up using low frequency with something." "Something like what?" Kerr asked. "Like each other. Or something external." The doctor hesitated. "And one more thing. Eli's body hasn't reacted to them as foreign. No immune response. It's like they've been there since early development." "Since birth?" Kerr asked. "Earlier," she said. "Possibly fetal stage." Kerr's skin prickled. He turned and looked through the glass at the boy again. "Who are you?" Later that night, a nurse charted vital signs while Kerr quietly observed. Suddenly, Eli stirred. His fingers twitched. The heart monitor beeped a little faster. The nurse leaned in, gently calling his name. Eli's eyes fluttered, then opened, calm, expressionless. His gaze shifted to Kerr, holding it for a few long seconds. "Are you real?" Eli whispered. The nurse froze. "What did you say, sweetie?" But Eli had already closed his eyes again. Kerr stepped away, walking down the corridor as a cold thought formed in his mind. This boy had been prepared for something, hidden. He called his team. I want full surveillance on the parents. Trace their movements for the last decade, where they lived, who they spoke to, what they bought. I want to know if anyone else is missing from the system." The agent frowned. "You think they're hiding more kids like Eli?" Kerr didn't answer. He was already dialing another number. "Get me a contact at DARPA. I think we've got something their Black Projects team needs to see." In the parents' holding room, Miranda sat motionless, staring at the blank wall. Her hands clutched the sleeves of her sweater, knuckles white. Nathan leaned over, speaking low. "It's starting," he said, not looking at her. "We always knew it would be perfect." Miranda didn't reply, but her eyes welled with tears. She turned slightly, whispering, "They'll never give him back, will they?" Nathan didn't answer. Down the hallway, the machines monitoring Eli's vitals began to flicker again. One of the monitors went dark for half a second, then returned. The waveform on the heart rate shifted slightly, not erratically, but rhythmically. Coordinated, as if responding to something no one else could hear, and deep inside Eli's unconscious mind, something was changing. Awaiting. The next morning began in the sterile stillness of a psychiatric observation suite at the Federal Medical Center. Eli, now awake and seated cross-legged on a padded bench, stared out the narrow window at the overcast sky. His face was calm, too calm for a child recently pulled from a whirlwind of security alarms, emergency responses, and his hands rested in his lap, not twitching or restless like most children. His breathing was steady, deliberate. Watching him from the observation glass was Dr. Maren Thorne, a child psychiatrist contracted by Homeland Security for cases that straddled medical science and unexplained anomalies. Thorne, a woman in her late 40s with silver-streaked hair tied back in a neat bun, scrambled a few notes in the margin of her tablet. She had spent the last hour speaking with Eli, if to describe what amounted to quiet, distant responses from a boy who seemed disconnected from time itself. "He's either the calmest trauma victim I've ever seen," she told Kerr during their debrief, "or he's repressing something so deeply it's almost completely inaccessible." Kerr leaned forward. "What about his memories?" Thorne glanced back at the observation window. "That's where things get interesting," she said. "He remembers things, but only from the age of 6 onward. Everything before that? It's blank. No fragments, no smells, no names, no emotions. Just nothing." "A clean slate. That's not normal memory loss, Agent Kerr. That's engineered." Kerr narrowed his eyes. "Engineered how?" Dr. Thorne sighed. "I ran him through standard recall exercises, object association, memory mapping, even guided hypnosis. The moment we hit anything before age 6, his mind just slides off it, like oil on glass. And the memories he does have, they're too smooth, too structured events, bedtime stories, family outings, birthday cakes, not a single contradiction, no dreamlike overlaps, no blurred edges. That's not how real childhood memories work. They're messy. His are curated." "You think his memories were implanted?" Kerr asked. "That's impossible." "Nothing is impossible anymore," Thorne said, her voice low, "especially with how little we know about what's been done to him. But yes, if I had to name it, I'd say someone erased his real childhood and replaced it with a synthetic narrative." Kerr looked through the glass at Eli again. The boy hadn't moved. His expression still blank, not hostile or afraid, just unmoored. Inside the room, Thorne returned to sit across from Eli. "Do you want to tell me about your earliest memory?" she asked gently. Eli tilted his head. "I was coloring, on the kitchen floor. Mom gave me crayons and paper." "How old were you?" Thorne asked. 6, Eli replied without hesitation. "Before that?" she asked Henry. "It's like I didn't exist yet." Thorne's pen froze. "What makes you say that?" Eli looked up, eyes distant. "Because there's no sound. It's like a hallway that echoes, but there's nothing there. Just pictures someone told me to remember." He said it like he was describing the weather. Calm, detached. "And do you feel scared about that?" she asked. Eli thought for a long moment. "No," he said, "just confused. But it's like my brain doesn't want me to dig. It pushes back, like someone else wrote it all down, and now I have to pretend it's mine." Outside the room, Kerr called in 2 specialists from memory research at Johns Hopkins. They reviewed the tapes and, after 2 hours, gave their opinion. Eli's responses, demeanor, and memory structure matched recent experimental profiles from studies in artificial memory encoding. "This isn't pseudoscience," one of them said. "It's theoretical frontier tech, something DARPA's been testing. Controlled memory templates, erasure followed by synthetic implanting, only we didn't know it had reached human trials." "Could someone do this to a child without federal clearance?" Kara asked. The researcher looked grim. "If they had funding, private labs, and no regard for ethics, yes. And if someone erased a kid's real identity, the only reason to replace it is because the truth is more dangerous than the lie." That same night, as Kerr reviewed old satellite surveillance data on the Simmons family, a red flag appeared. For almost 5 years, they had lived on a remote property in northern Arizona, listed under a shell corporation with no registered employees. The property was equipped with signal blockers, surveillance-proof fencing, and what appeared to be a reinforced sub-basement. But the most disturbing part was a heat signature scan from 3 years earlier. For 6 months, the property registered multiple additional bodies on site, none of whom were ever seen entering or leaving. Kerr made the call. "We need to search that Arizona site, tonight." Back at the hospital, Dr. Thorne returned to Eli. "I want you to try something for me," she said. She placed a small object on the table, a smooth river stone. "Can you tell me what this reminds you of?" Eli looked at the stone, his face tensed slightly. Then his hands started shaking. His lips parted, but no words came out. His breathing quickened. "It's loud," Thorne pressed. "The room, the place. I can hear someone counting, metal on metal. A woman crying." Eli suddenly grabbed his head. "It's not my memory," he said, eyes wide. "It's someone else's." The monitor spiked, heart rate up, pupils dilated. Something was cracking through the surface. But just as fast, he collapsed back into silence. The flood shut off. He looked up at Thorne and said softly, "Whoever made me, they didn't want me to remember." Later that week, under heavy security and increasing curiosity, Eli was transferred from the psychiatric unit to a classified wing of Fort Bragg's Military Research Hospital. The transition came after an urgent message from Dr. Maren Thorne to Agent Kerr, her voice unusually sharp through the encrypted line. His memory may have been altered, but something inside him isn't just passive. One of the implants, it pulsed when I showed him the stone. It responded. That single phrase triggered immediate protocol escalation. Now Eli lay motionless in a lead-linked medical chamber, surrounded by machines humming with electromagnetic sensors, spectrum analyzers, and encrypted receivers. The room, chilled and windowless, was filled with the quiet dread that comes with unexplainable data. On a monitor beside Eli's bed, a tiny red waveform blinked in rhythmic bursts, every 11 minutes and 47 seconds. Like a coded verb blinked in. The waveform wasn't static. It pulsed across frequencies in a shifting pattern, barely detectable unless you were specifically looking for it. One technician leaned closer to the monitor. "It's not interference," she said. "This is structured. Someone or something is sending a signal." Colonel Raymond Keene, a military physician with over 2 decades of classified battlefield medicine experience, was called in. A grizzled man with piercing eyes and an impeccable record, Keene had treated soldiers exposed to tech most people didn't believe existed. When he examined the scans of the implants, he didn't say much at first. He simply stared. Then he turned to Kerr. "These aren't medical. They're military grade," he said bluntly. "Well, and anything on record, not even in DARPA's published specs." Kerr frowned. "How do you know?" Keene pointed at the layout of the implants. "Symmetrical placement, each one strategically located near neural junctions or vascular nodes. That's not healing design, that's data flow mapping." "You're saying he's wired like a system?" Kerr asked. Keene nodded. "More like a sensor array." The discovery set off a chain of classified briefings. Signal specialists were brought in from Nellis Air Force Base. The team huddled in a command center beneath Fort Bragg. As they synchronized their instruments to the pulse frequency, something unexpected happened. One of the receivers locked on to a directional source, a faint triangulation pointing directly toward the Nevada desert. More specifically, toward an area just outside Groom Lake. Agent Kerr leaned over the technician's shoulder. "Isn't that near?" Area 51, the text said flatly. Yes, but not inside it. The signal's bouncing from an unregistered coordinate. No listed facility or installation, but definitely transmitting. Kerr stepped back, heart pounding. You're telling me this boy has something in him that's phoning home? The technician's silence was enough. In the background, a printer spat out a topographic map with a flashing red dot in the middle of a tan expanse marked as government-restricted airspace. So, who's answering the call? Kerr asked, no one in particular. Meanwhile, Eli remained eerily calm throughout the tests. At times, when the scans would begin to whir and light beams swept over him, he would blink slowly, as if he could feel the technology interacting with him. On 2 separate occasions, the implant in his right wrist vibrated visibly beneath the skin, setting off a cascade of machine alerts. Colonel Keene had the hospital sealed to external devices and even grounded the room to prevent outside dash of leakage. But the signal kept pulsing, like a whisper trying to break free from inside Eli's body. One night, Dracula's visited the boy again, this time carrying a different kind of test. She brought a blank metal plate connected to an analog reader. When she gently placed it near Eli's shoulder, the reader spiked with encoded static. She blinked. The implant is responding to non-digital metal, Keene stepped forward. Or trying to write to it, like a tag. He looked sharply at the plate. These are not just receivers, they're transmitters. They're broadcasting. A decision was made to surgically extract one of the objects. A minor operation, guided by precision scanners, was conducted under full sedation. What they pulled from Eli's body was a metallic capsule, no larger than a fingernail, but its internal composition shocked even the most seasoned specialists. It contained no battery, no antenna, no moving part, yet it emitted a low-frequency pulse, had a crystalline core that changed color when exposed to heat, and most disturbingly was engraved with microscopic text in a language no one immediately recognized. Kerr had the object photographed and sent to the cryptography department. It's not any known human language, one analyst said. It's patterned like code, but not binary, more like each character is a whole instruction. At 3:42 a.m. the following night, an external device placed in Eli's room picked up a different kind of signal, not outbound, but inbound. A return ping. It was brief, 5 milliseconds long, but it originated from the Nevada location. The contents of the transmission were indecipherable, but immediately after, Eli sat up straight in bed, heart open, normalized. Dr. Thorne rushed in. "Lee, can you hear me?" she asked, voice tight. Eli blinked slowly, then said a single sentence. "They're coming to take it back." "What is?" she asked. Eli stared at her. "The part that doesn't belong." Colonel Keene examined the capsule again later that morning and made an unseating observation. The material, once inert, was now warm. It seemed aware. He tapped Kerr on the shoulder. "We're not looking at alien tech," he said. "This is worse. This is ours. But from a project so deep, even I never heard whispers. Someone built this. Someone hid it. And now they want it back." Kerr stared at the map again, the red dot at Nevada blinking steadily like a countdown. By the time the morning shift changed at Fort Bragg's restricted medical wing, the room where Eli had been held was already empty. No alarm had been triggered, no surveillance footage showed anyone leaving. It was as if the family had evaporated. The night before, Miranda had requested a private visit to say goodnight, a request granted under escort, but sometime between 2:00 and 4:00 a.m., she, Nathan, and Eli were gone. Their biometric trackers, standard-issue devices attached to all high-risk subjects, had stopped transmitting within seconds of each other. Kerr stood in the observation room staring at the blank monitor. "Check every exit," he barked. "Drain pipes, service tunnels, roof access, everything. I want to know how they got out without tripping a single goddamn sensor." Teams were dispatched immediately, but they were already too late. Within 4 hours, a highway patrol drone picked up an abandoned vehicle 60 miles outside Las Vegas, deep in the Dust Bowl of Nevada, halfway between nowhere and nothing. The plates had been stripped, VINs burned off, but inside, officers found fresh footprints, food wrappers, and a still warm thermos of coffee. Whoever had been there had moved on minutes before. What caught the attention of the federal team wasn't the car, it was what lay half a mile beyond it. An old chain-link fence, half buried by sand, marked by faded signs that read, UUUS. Property, restricted, transparents, will be prosecute. Beyond the fence stood the skeleton of a structure long thought decommissioned, a black site facility known only by its project number, Warden 3. Eli stood silently at the edge of the structure, his small frame outlined by the dying orange sun. His shoes kicked up dust as he walked forward, guided not by sight or memory, but by something deeper. The facility was no longer powered, its windows shattered, equipment rusted. Vines and dust had claimed most of its corridors, yet as the family moved deeper inside, Eli seemed to know where to turn. Nathan held a flashlight while Miranda kept glancing back, anxious, her hands trembling. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. Eli didn't answer. He walked until they reached a central chamber, half considered but still accessible. In the corner was a medical chair covered in a yellowing tarp. Nearby, a cracked wall held the faint outline of a handprint scanner. Eli walked up to it, placed his hand on the faded surface. Nothing happened, but then his knees buckled. Miranda rushed forward. "Eli?" she gasped. He didn't speak. He fell backward, eyes wide open, as if something unseen had hit him. Inside Eli's mind, an image surged forward like a wave breaching a dam. He stood in a sterile white room, the smell of antiseptic stinging his nostrils. A hum of machines buzzed behind him. In front of him stood a woman, young, late 20s maybe, with tired eyes and a white lab coat stained at the cuffs. Her voice was soft but firm. "You're one of the first," she said. "Generation 1. You're very important, Eli." The name didn't register. "Why can't I go outside?" he asked, in the voice of a child. She crouched to his level. "Because outside isn't ready for you yet. Your body needs time. Your mind needs boundaries. One day you'll leave, but not yet." Her hand brushed his cheek. "Do you know what makes you special? Do you integrated?" The scene shifted, her face fading like fog, and then everything went black. Back in the real world, Eli gasped for air as Miranda held him. "He's remembering," Nathan said grimly. "The implants aren't just tech. They're tied to his memory. The signal, it's unlocking him." Kerr arrived at the facility 2 hours later, escorted by an armored team. The heat was unbearable, the wind slicing through their suits with microscopic sand. "This place was shut down in 99, one of the officers said, pointing at the building. "A failed trial program. Classified stuff. They called it biosensor integration. Mostly rumor." Kerr stepped into the chamber where Eli had collapsed. "It's not rumor anymore." Eli sat now, calm again, but pale, as if every memory came with a cost. "The woman," he said softly. "She used to read me stories. She smelled like cinnamon and latex gloves. She said I'd be strong, stronger than the others." Kerr crouched down. "Do you remember her name?" Eli shook his head. "No, but she used to call me Prototype Zero." The term sent chills through the room. "There were others," Eli added. "They didn't stay long. Some left, some screamed a lot. Then one day, they stopped coming. And she said I was the only one left who didn't break." Outside the structure, an RF scanner suddenly lit up. The same signal from Fort Bragg was now broadcasting again, but stronger, more urgent. It was as if Eli's proximity to the facility had triggered a beacon. One of the techs turned to Kerr. "Sir, I think someone else heard it." Kerr's face tensed. "And something out there is moving toward us." Beneath the shifting sands of the Nevada desert, the deeper levels of the Warden 3 facility came to life, like a buried skeleton waking from dormancy. As power cables were reconnected to mobile generators, a faint green glow began to flicker across the underground command center walls, revealing rows of filing cabinets, rusted lockers, and a central data terminal that had somehow survived over a decade in silence. Kerr moved through the dust-heavy room, his gloved fingers brushing against cold metal drawers labeled in fading black ink. Gen 1, Sub-J 3, Neural Map Logs. He signaled for his team to begin a full cataloging of everything intact. Within minutes, a corporal called out from the far end of the corridor. "Sir, we've got something here. You need to see this." Kerr hurried over, joining the officer at an open cabinet filled with thick black binders, each one stamped with red-lettered warnings. EI only, Project No Metric Defense. One binder was left half open at its convenience. One binder was left half open, its cover page displaying the stark image of a DNA strand overlaid with circuit diagrams. In the corner was a line of text that made Care freeze. Subject ID, IL-0 Class, Generation 1, Incregenum. Trials that remained like science fiction. It outlined an off-book military project initiated in 2008 aimed at engineering hybrid human subjects using cloned fetal tissue enhanced with nanotech implants. The objective was chillingly simple: create soldiers who could interface directly with electronic systems, bypass traditional control mechanisms, and adapt biologically to new environments at accelerated rates. The subjects, designed from the ground up, were grown in controlled environments and paired with synthetic memory templates. Each was implanted with nanoscale processors distributed throughout the nervous system, what they termed the digital corpus lattice. Eli, listed as Prototype 0, had shown the highest compatibility rate among all test subjects, with 94.7% integration. The documents noted that all other Gen 1 children had either failed to stabilize or had been terminated due to neural rejection. Care read the final paragraph of the page aloud. Subject 0 was placed into external observational care under Project Concordia, with assigned custodians embedded under family identities. Primary objectives: social integration monitoring, implant synchronization, and long-term cognitive stability analysis. His voice trailed off. The meaning sank in like poison. And worse, his so-called parents weren't biological guardians. They were assigned handlers. Back in the upper levels of the facility, Eli sat with Dr. Thorne in a dim corner office, his face blank, but his eyes alert. He didn't cry. He didn't panic. But something in his expression had changed. It was more than fear, it was awareness. "Did you remember?" Sloaner asked. Eli nodded slowly. It was a room, a white room, and a woman. She was crying when she signed a paper. She said she didn't want to do it, but that I wouldn't survive without it. Then men came and took me away. "Do you remember what they said about you?" Thorne asked. Eli hesitated. "That I wasn't born. I was made." At that moment, Kerr entered the room, his face a stone mask of conflicted authority. "Eli," he said carefully, "there's something we need to talk about." Nathan and Miranda were already seated across from him, hands locked tightly together. Miranda looked as if she hadn't breathed in hours. Kerr placed the file on the table, sliding it across. "He found your origin records. You weren't adopted, you were assigned. You weren't born in a hospital. You were engineered. You've been watched your entire life." The words hung in the air like smoke. Eli looked at his mother. "Is it true?" She couldn't answer. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled. Nathan finally spoke. Trey opened the door and stepped out. "They only told us what was necessary, that we were saving you, that you wouldn't live in a lab like the others, that we could give you a real childhood, that maybe, it would make you more human." "But it was a lie," Eli said, not angry, not broken, just tired. Outside, the air shimmered with heat. The antenna array atop the facility blinked with new life, as if the recovered data had sparked a chain reaction in systems thought long dead. In a back corridor, one of the soldiers discovered a sealed vault marked Archive, empty and cracked open. Each bore a serial number, each one had a name. One label read Subject 2, stamped to stamp step. Another read Subject 5, missing, and a third, still fogged from thaw, read Subject 7, confirmed. Care called for immediate evacuation of non-essential personnel. Whatever this place had once contained, it had not died quietly. The truth was surfacing like oil in dark water, and he had the sinking feeling that the project had never truly stopped. It had simply gone deeper. In the mess of documents retrieved from the server room, one file stood out, a personal log from the lead project engineer, time-stamped 7 months after the official shutdown date. The final entry read, "Subject 0 has shown unanticipated emotional formation. Synthetic memories appear to be blending with adaptive cognitive empathy. Recommend continued remote observation. Warning, Proximity to source zone may trigger dormant systems. Avoid activation at all costs. Outside the Warden 3 facility, storm clouds gathered across the Nevada sky, casting a steel-gray gloom over the sand and scrub. Inside, tension had calcified into something dense and suffocating. Kerr stood in the main comms room, speaking quietly into a secure line, his voice clipped and urgent. The emotional vector 0 is exhibiting emergent responses beyond original projections. The emotional vector was underestimated. On the screen before him, Eli sat alone in an adjacent containment suite, eyes closed, fingertips grazing a panel of smooth metal. Without warning, every inactive monitor in the room flickered to life, displaying cascading code, hex strings, and neural signal patterns that no human had input. Kerr stared, speechless. The technician beside him whispered, "He's reading the system, by touch." In the family quarters, Miranda paced restlessly, her palms pressed to her temples. She hadn't slept since the discovery. Nathan sat silently, resigned, his face pale and motionless. The files still lay open on the table between them. Miranda's voice cracked. "They didn't change. His response was mechanical. He was never ours. He's part of something bigger." "No," Miranda snapped. "Don't say that. Don't you dare reduce him to data. I raised him. I sang him to sleep. I taught him how to write his name. He cried on my chest when he had nightmares." "You think some lab coat can replicate that?" Her voice trembled. "He's my son. I don't care what the DNA says. He's mine." Later that evening, Miranda slipped into Eli's room and found him standing still, his hand pressed flat against the wall, his eyes unfocused. "Eli?" she whispered. He turned slowly. "The building hums," he said, "like it's alive. I can hear where the power used to be." He walked to her, took her hand, and held it against a disconnected terminal. "It's cold here. Nothing flows, but over there," he pointed to the far wall. "There's something behind it, something still breathing." Miranda didn't know what to say. She only knelt before him, took his face in her hands. "You're not a machine," she said fiercely. "You're not some project. You're Eli, my Eli. I don't care who built you. They didn't love you. I did." She pulled him into a hug. "You're my son, no matter who created you." Her voice cracked on the last word. The next morning, a military convoy arrived under orders to retrieve the subject for immediate transfer. Kerr protested, arguing the emotional disruption would trigger system instability, but the command came from higher up, from a black-level directive labeled Omega Directive. Soldiers in black armor entered the facility with protocols in hand. Miranda stepped in front of Eli as they approached. "You can't take him?" she said. The lead soldier ignored her. Nathan raised his hands. "Don't do this," he said, but there was no strength behind it. Miranda shouted, "He's not going. You'll have to go through me." As the soldier reached for her, every light in the corridor went dark. A low hum filled the air, then sparks burst from every panel like the building itself was fighting back. Eli stepped forward, placing his palm on the floor. The metal beneath his skin glowed faintly, threads of silver light tracing out from his hand like veins. Screams along the hallway lit up with scrolling code. Eli's breath quickened as data raced through him. "I can see it all," he murmured. "The locks, the failsafes, the override keys. It's all still here." "What are you doing?" Kerr asked, rushing forward. Eli didn't answer. His eyes had turned glassy silver. Then the doors slammed shut behind them, sealing the military team outside. Miranda held her breath. "Eli, stop," she said softly. "They'll think you're dangerous." "I am," he said, "but not to you." Within hours, the Pentagon received word of a breach at Warden 3. But internal comms had been jammed. The only message transmitted out came from a repurposed emergency channel. "Do not engage. Subject transmissioning." Inside, Eli's abilities escalated. He could touch a dead screen and watch data bloom beneath his fingers. He could walk past rusted panels and hear fragments of logs, voices that once filled these walls. "It's like I was asleep before," he told Dr. Thorne, who had refused evacuation. "Now I'm waking up." Kerr gathered his team in the command chamber. "He's evolving, fast, and this building, whatever's left in its systems, is helping him. One technician pulled up a heat map. It's like the entire facility is syncing with his body. He's becoming a part of the architecture. Terry stepped forward. You all thought you could raise him in isolation, but no one considered what would happen when you brought him home. Back in Eli's room, Miranda knelt beside her son. Tell me what you need, she said. He turned to her, a quiet glow under his skin. I need to finish what they started, he said. But I'll choose how. She reached for his hand. It felt warm, too warm, but she held on. The silence surrounding Warden 3 was pierced by the soft whir of rotor blades slicing through desert air. A black transport helicopter descended in the distance, kicking up a cyclone of dust and grit, its unmarked exterior gleaming under the late afternoon sun. From its open side hatch, 6 figures in matte tactical gear disembarked in swift formation. They moved like shadows, precise, silent, and lethal. No insignia, no names, just a shared intensity in their movements and a clear objective. Retrieve Subject 0. Kerr stood at the northern entrance, already aware this wasn't a standard military retrieval. The commanding figure of the squad approached him without offering rank or clearance. Your authority here is suspended, the man said flatly. This is under Directive A, HA classification triple black. The subject is no longer within your jurisdiction. Kerr didn't move. He's a child, he said coldly. No, the agent corrected. He's a prototype, a classified asset, and he's been off-grid for over 10 years. Inside the control room, Miranda felt it in her chest before she saw it, the kind of instinctive dread only a mother could interpret. She turned to the screens and watched the surveillance feed go static one by one, the facility's once cooperative systems now locked down by an external override. They're here, she whispered. Eli looked up from the console, his silver-tinged eyes narrowing. They don't want me back, he said quietly. They want to shut me off. He placed his palm on the interface, trying to force control back into the system, but the response was sluggish. They're using master keys, he muttered. High-level encryption. Moments later, the squad breached the western corridor with tactical precision, moving through the facility with infrared scanners and internal schematics only someone from the original project would have access to. Eli's presence triggered their proximity sensors like a beacon. They moved fast, bypassing broken doors and collapsed chambers. One of them spoke over comms. Target is active, signal stable, prepare suppression protocol. As they neared the central junction, 2 soldiers peeled off to secure the perimeter while the others approached the containment level. In the command chamber, tried stalling. You don't have clearance to operate lethal suppression on U.S. soil without oversight, he warned. The team leader didn't flinch. There's nothing lethal, just containment. You've already seen what he can do. Now ask yourself what happens if he loses control? Kerr clenched his fists. He's not a weapon. He's a boy. The agent leaned in. Not anymore. Meanwhile, deep within the facility, Eli's breathing quickened. He could feel them now, moving like ripples in a pond. His fingertips grazed the metal table beside him, and data surged through his nerves. A blueprint unfolded in his mind. Vents, tunnels, weak points. They're using old paths, he said. Ons I don't remember, but my body does. Miranda gripped his arm. We can run, she said. There's still time. But Eli hesitated. One of them feels familiar. The team breached the final door. 4 agents entered, weapons raised, lasers fixed on the boy. Subject 0, one barked. Stand down. You are being recalled under Section 8 of Directive Aegis. Resistance will result in protocol enforcement. Miranda stepped between them. He's not going with you, she said, voice shaking but firm. The agent gave a short nod. Understood. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, another agent stepped forward, lifting her hand. Wait. Her voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. The others paused, confused. The woman removed her helmet, hair and eyes that shimmered with something more than duty. Eli stared. Time fractured. In an instant, memory surged, the scent of antiseptic and warm skin, the feel of soft gloves brushing his cheek, the voice that had once whispered bedtime formulas instead of lullabies. You're one of the first, she had said, but you don't have to be the last. His voice cracked. "It's you," she gave a subtle nod. The agents turned to her in shock. "What the hell are you doing?" one demanded. But Amira had already drawn her sidearm, pointed not at Eli, but at her own team. "He's not going back. Not with you." Chaos erupted. In one swift motion, Amira fired a warning shot into the ceiling, then tossed a concussion pulse down the hallway. "Run," she shouted. "Take the lower corridor. There's a lift still active under sub-level 5. Eli grabbed Miranda's hand. Nathan followed, stunned but moving. The team scrambled after them, but Amira stood her ground, firing strategically to buy seconds. "Why?" one of her teammates cried. "Because he was never just code," she answered. "He was a person, and you erased that for convenience." Through flickering tunnels and half-lit stairwells, Eli led his family downward. His hands brushed walls, feeling power grids, unlocking doors with mere contact. His abilities were no longer chaotic. They were directional, focused. "This way," he said, voice resolute. "I remember the exit. I remember the fail-safes they built in case of failure." "But I'm not failing." Back in the corridor, Amira ducked under gunfire, retreating after locking the main blast door. She touched her earpiece. "0 is clear. I'll cover the trace. Tell the others I died if you have to." Static answered, then silence. The abandoned rail shaft beneath Watered 3 stretched like a forgotten artery deep into the rock, a relic from the original construction when supplies were moved covertly underground. Now it served as the only passage left unguarded, unknown even to the current Black Ops retrieval teams. Amira led the way with calculated steps, her flashlight sweeping across collapsed beams and old oxygen tanks long emptied. Behind her, Eli, Miranda, and Nathan followed in silence, the sound of their breathing harsh against the low-ceilinged space. When they finally emerged into a hidden chamber, a backup control outpost deep beneath the facility, Eli sealed the hatch behind them and turned, breath steady, eyes sharp. "We don't have long," she said. "They'll realize this passage exists soon, but there's something you need to know before we run any further." Her eyes locked on Eli's, and for a moment, the weight of everything that had been hidden settled into the narrow room like dust. She pulled a metal case from a wall recess, keyed in a sequence only she seemed to remember, and opened it to reveal 5 sealed cylinders, each one labeled with a serial code beginning with ZR. She lifted one and held it out. "This was Subject 4, she said. "Real name, Jonas. He didn't survive past age 8. Neural rejection. His implants shut down one by one until his body gave up." She opened another. "Subject 2, Lila. She vanished. The facility went into lockdown, but we never recovered her. It was the first time we realized the implants could evolve." Her voice tightened. "There were 5 of you. 5 successes in a sea of failures. The rest either destabilized or were terminated at gestational stage. You, Eli, were prototype 0. You were different from the start, not just because your body accepted the implants, but because your mind did too." Miranda stepped forward, voice tight. "What are you saying?" Amira sighed. "I'm saying your son isn't just unique. He's the only one still traceable. The others are either dead or unfindable." Eli didn't speak. He moved to the case and looked at the cylinders as if something inside them still called to him. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked. Amira looked pained. "Because they didn't want you to know. The entire structure developed naturally. Interference would have corrupted your emotional algorithms." Nathan's voice was dry. "Algorithms?" Amira nodded. "You think in parallel layers, Eli. Your brain doesn't just process information like a normal child's. It maps, predicts, adapts. The implants weren't just tracking you, they were encoding stimuli into dormant skills. Skills we never activated." She walked to a nearby console, flicked on a battery-powered monitor, and pulled up a simulation model. It displayed 12 points across a human body, each aligned with key nervous clusters. Each device in your body represents a node linked to a core function. One enhances perception, one language processing, one kinetic modeling, another neuroplastic acceleration. All of them were designed to activate in stages triggered by stimuli and environment, but the master protocol was never uploaded. "That's not dormant." "It's partial," Amira said. "You've activated 4, maybe 5, but there are more. And each one is a doorway to a different kind of learning no human brain was built to do. Miranda looked at her son, suddenly seeing him not just as her child, but as something quietly, impossibly other. "You mean he can learn anything?" "Not just learn," Amira replied. "Absorb, replicate, simulate. Imagine putting a violin in his hands for the first time, and by touch, his nervous system downloads centuries of muscle memory. Give him a blueprint for a circuit, and he can build it blindfolded. If he survives full activation, there's no ceiling to what he could become." "But if," Nathan said, voice sharp, "what happens if he doesn't?" Amira looked away. "That's why I ran, because the government solution wasn't training, it was containment. They didn't want to risk instability. Their plan was to extract the active implants, preserve the data, and terminate the host." Miranda gripped Eli's shoulders. "Not while I breathe." Eli stood, walking to the far wall, where an old server rack hummed faintly. He reached out and pressed his palm against the cold metal. The room flickered, screens came alive, data poured down the displays, languages, maps, interface models. Eli's eyes widened. "I can feel it now, more than before. It's like the nodes are waking up." Amira's voice was a whisper. "You're sinking." Suddenly the lights dimmed. The console beeped with a proximity alert. A flashing dot on the monitor moved closer to their location. Kerr's voice crackled through an old speaker. "They found the shaft," Amira said, drawing her weapon. "We have maybe 10 minutes." Eli didn't flinch. "No, not if it hurts you," but Eli shook his head. "It doesn't hurt, not anymore." He walked back to the case, opened the last cylinder, and pulled from it a small orb, a backup core node never implanted. It glowed faintly in his hand. "What are you doing?" Nathan asked. Eli held the orb near his chest. "Finishing the sequence," he said, and then he pressed it to his skin. The orb dissolved into Eli's chest like a droplet into still water, and for a moment the room went deathly silent. Then a surge of energy pulsed outward in a ring of light so soft and silver it shimmered like breath in cold air. Every device in the chamber blinked to life, then stilled. Eli stood, changed not in appearance but in presence. His eyes, though still blue, shimmered beneath the surface, with a network of light, like circuitry woven into his irises. He looked at his hands and flexed his fingers slowly. "I feel everything," he said. "The machines, the frequencies, the people." Amira stepped forward cautiously. "What people?" Eli turned toward her. "The others, not just the ones who built me, the ones they forgot. There are still survivors, damaged, hidden, broken, but I can sense them. I think I can find them." Miranda clutched his arm, fear creeping back into her voice. "What do you mean, find them? You want to expose yourself again? After everything they've done?" But Eli shook his head. "It's not about hiding anymore. If I run, they win. If I do nothing, they win. But if I help the others, like me, the ones they buried or abandoned, then I decide who I am." Over the next few hours, they moved fast. Amira guided them to a remote relay node still active beneath the mountain range. Eli tapped into it, sending out encrypted pulses across dormant channels, searching not for threats, but for echoes of others like him. The response wasn't immediate, but it came. 2 pings, then 3. A fourth, distorted but there. Somewhere others still lived. When the task force attempted to breach again, he stood in their way and demanded a review. "We've committed crimes here," he said over comms. "We use children as data cores. This boy is not our failure. He is our consequence." His report, transmitted to a small circle of high-level auditors in the Department of Defense, sparked outrage. Within a week, Omega Directive was suspended. Within a month, Project Warden was dismantled. Publicly, nothing was said. Officially, the site was deemed unsafe and condemned. But quietly, teams were redirected. Victims located by Eli's signals were recovered, some physically scarred, others mentally shattered, but all still alive. Amira helped set up a facility not for research but for recovery, outside the federal network, and Eli was its cornerstone. He wasn't just a patient, he was the key. His implants, once designed for control, now gave him the ability to interface with broken systems inside human minds. Through touch, he could map trauma, understand it, and help rewire it, offering clarity where once there was only chaos. 6 months later, in a small town outside Boulder, Colorado, Eli stood on a porch beside Miranda and Nathan, holding a folder in one hand. Inside was a birth certificate, legally issued, with the name Elijah Michael Green, citizen of the United States, born July 14th, son of Miranda and Nathan Green. Legally, biologically, no. But through a series of quietly sanctioned approvals, the government had wiped the old records and made space for the life Eli chose, not the one forced upon him. He still visited the facility regularly, meeting with survivors, working with Amira, guiding those who could not yet find the strength to look back at the pain they carried. He never saw himself as a savior. "I'm just a mirror," he once said. "I reflect what they need to see." His powers remained, now stable and complete. He could hear data when it passed through wires, read memories encoded in faded photographs, even predict mechanical failures by the pitch of a circuit. But his greatest gift, Amira would say, was not his mind. "It's his choice," she told a new staffer. "He chose not to become what they made him for." That's power. One summer afternoon, Eli walked alone through a wooded trail, the light breaking through the trees in gold patches. In his pocket was a small chip, one of the original pain it held, the memories locked within. As he approached the lake at the end of the path, he held the chip to the water, closed his eyes, and whispered, "You're not forgotten." Then he let it fall. At home, Miranda prepared dinner, humming softly, her hands steady for the first time in years. Nathan chopped vegetables, more present than ever. When Eli walked in, dirt on his shoes, they smiled, not because he was special, but because he was theirs. And for the first time in his life, Eli smiled too, not out of programming or survival, but because he had earned it. If this story moved you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another mystery like this one. What part shocked you the most? Do you think Eli made the right choice in the end? And where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts and seeing how far these stories reach.